In terms of, even when we were in jail, it was so unbelievable that do a program on campus that you will be sent to jail and charged with one of the highest penal codes within the IPC. That was something that was unthinkable. And it's not the first time that someone was expressing an opinion on Afzal Guru or on Kashmir. These have been opinions that have been taken by several legal experts, several democratic rights activists, even people within mainstream politics. They've questioned Afzal Guru's hanging. Lots of people have spoken about Kashmir and what's been happening in Kashmir, and even about the question of self-determination. But the fact that sedition was imposed on us, it was within a political context where the government is all out to choke alternative voices, to choke voices of dissent, and especially also over the last 2 years also targeting one university after the other. So this law being imposed on us, we being which wanted, had a political context, and that's what sedition has all been all about. The sedition law that has been enforced since 1860, if you look at recent history, it's always used against dissidents, against political activists, against people of various people's movements. I'll come back to this, but just before that, there is an interesting thing, that the way the government was whipping this up after 9th of February. So I was on this show, which I now regret, on Times Now, 9 PM with Arnab Goswami, and Arnab was just not letting us speak. In between, he asked us a question. This is 24 hours before the first FIR was filed, and he says that, do you know that there's something called sedition in this country? There's a law for sedition in this country. And no. He said that, do you know what is section 124A? Can you explain section 124A for us? So I said, yes, it is sedition law, and it's been one of the most misused laws in the country against political opponents, against voices of dissent. This has been used. And in hindsight, what struck me was he playing to a script? Did he already knew what was going to unfold? And I really think the way media houses were whipping this up and creating a frenzy in terms of manufacturing consent, to borrow Noam Chomsky's words, for our later witch hunt. And that's, in this political context, we were imposed with this sedition law. To come back to how it's one of the most misused laws, if you see, one of the highest sedition cases are imposed against adivasis in Jharkhand. And most of these cases end in acquittal, and that's the thing with sedition. You charge someone with one of the highest laws in the country, and then you hardly have any convictions. And this is just to ensure that certain voices are silenced. And what is the context in Jharkhand? There is massive land grab, there is displacement of adivasis, there is intense militarization, and of course, when all of this happens, people are also resisting it in very many ways. And to ensure that this resistance is crushed, you just pick up leaders, just pick up activists, or even common adivasis, and you impose them, you put them behind bars under section 124A. And once again, most of these things end in acquittal. So what we are witnessing, through these various laws, think of voices of dissent, and sedition perfectly fits there. As you said, this was something that was enacted in 1860. At that time, the context was the 1857 rebellion was fresh in the minds of the British, and they wanted any further rebellions they wanted to ensure that no further rebellions happen, and they wanted to control intractable populations, a very rebellious population, and they were in fear of any further unrest happening across the country. And that's when all these penal measures were taken in. And that is the point, that when harsh laws is a consequence of the economic and political policies that you follow. Draconian laws are just a consequence of that, because these laws have no legitimacy amongst the people, that your policies have no legitimacy amongst the people, and you want to impose them, which is why you need penal laws of this kind, which is why you need death penalty, which is why you need UAP, and a whole plethora of laws. You had TADA and POTA before that. Post 47, what we have seen is that though officially we've been declared as independent, a lot of things have continued that the British did. Majority of the Indian Penal Code still remains the same. Many economic policies still remain the same. You had Nehru giving this slogan where there's a lot of fanfare that there is going to be land to the tiller. But even government accepts that was a failed project. And over decades, you've had this complete kneeling down to the forces of the market and adoption of these policies of liberalization, privatization and globalization. And this was a time when this entire bogey of Islamic terror was also raised. This was also a time Soviet Union collapsed, Islam replaced communism as the biggest enemy to the world peace. You had in India Hindu right emerging. And to quote Arundhati Roy, it is not a coincidence that the doors of Babri Masjid and doors of the market were opened simultaneously. And what you saw with the right wing, a complete shift in right wing polity. I will not say emergence of BJP as a right wing force. Even beyond BJP, even forces that call themselves secular, going over to that side. And right now, as a consequence of that, you have a BJP government in complete majority. And they want to impose, it's not just about economic policies. I mean, that is something that they're taking up more aggressively than the previous government. But they also have an ideological agenda. And that's what makes it very dangerous. I mean, it's not like just a dhanda party that dhanda chalna chahiye aur sab kuch sahi rahe, wo Congress ki tarah paisa aata rahe. These are people who are serious about imposing their ideology. I mean, this is an RSS government. So what happened with Salman in Kerala is a consequence of that. So freedom of expression, the moment you question any of these things, I mean, Salman, after not standing up on the national anthem, he also went back and he also wrote a piece on his Facebook wall critiquing nationalism philosophically. And that is something that all of us should. I mean, we are students, we are young minds, and we don't take any concept as given. Be it democracy, be it nationalism, be it nation states. We know for a fact, though, the ideology of nationalism has a lot of anachronism at work. I mean, they want to portray as if nations have been existing since time immemorial. But as students of history, we know that is not the case. And we need to interrogate that. We also know that in the names of nationalism, 2 world wars have been fought. In the name of national security, so many wars have been fought. And these are all questions that we need to, I mean, we need to ask these questions more and more. So sedition has become also this law where the government is bullying us, browbeating us into accepting a very majoritarian kind of a view. I mean, if you just look at the sedition law, it says that to promote disaffection against the government established by law, make someone, I mean, a person can be arrested under sedition. Now, if you call yourself a democracy, to promote disaffection against an elected government is the duty of every citizen. I mean, if the government has been elected, that does not mean that you have to wait for 5 years to say anything that in 5 years, if it is doing anything wrong, you cannot speak out against it. I mean, right to association, right to speech, these are very fundamental rights of every citizen. And for their fundamental rights, if you are going to arrest people, I mean, that is something that the colonial power did. And these are things that are, as I said, essential in a democracy. Now, if you're not going to give these very essential things in a democracy, then I have a question mark over the nature of democracy that we have. I mean, do we really have a democracy, or is this just a formal democracy? I mean, what Baba Sahab said at the time of when the constitution was adopted, that we are now entering into a life of contradictions. At a political level, we have democracy, whereas one man, one value. But at a social and economic level, inequalities exist, and there is no democracy at a social and economic level. And also that unless until we establish social and economic democracy, then only this political democracy makes any sense. Because that has not been established, which is why draconian laws are required. I mean, which is why you need to have, though you are asking me about sedition, but you need to have all these kind of laws. I mean, as I said, TADA, POTA, UAPA, Armed Forces Special Powers Act, because you know your rule is not popular. I mean, it's the same way, it's not just continuation of colonial laws, it's also continuation of a colonial way of rule that we are seeing today. उसका एक कारण ये भी है कि मतलब वो सेडिशन को राजद्रोह की बजाय देशद्रोह बोलते हैं. और पिछले 20 साल में अगर देखेंगे तो जो नेशनलिज्म को विप अप किया गया है, अगर मैं अभी 28 साल का हूँ, अगर मैं जब मैं पैदा हुआ 87 में, उसी के समय कश्मीर मिलिटेंसी का आर्म स्ट्रगल जो कश्मीर में वो शुरू हुआ. और अगर आप कुछ उदाहरण लूँ, मतलब जिस तरीके से मीडिया में रिप्रेजेंटेशन हुआ उसका, बॉलीवुड में रिप्रेजेंटेशन हुआ उसका, फॉर एग्जांपल मूवीज लाइक रोजा एंड ऑल, दे ट्राइड टू पोर्ट्रे अ सर्टेन व्यू. And because the people who are doing all of these have a lot of resources, have a lot of capital and a lot of connections, they sort of become opinion makers in the society. And उसके चलते अब कुछ भी एंटी नेशनल बोल देना, उसके बाद बहुत सारे लोग, और ये के सेडिशन लॉ उन लोगों के खिलाफ होता है जो एंटी नेशनल होते हैं, जो देश के हित के खिलाफ काम कर रहे हैं, तो उसके मतलब even Tada and Pota, section of the middle class supported that also. It was only a section of the civil society which stood up against it. और उस campaign ने force किया even certain political parties to repeal Tada and Pota. But if you actually see, though Tada and Pota were repealed formally, UAPA जो रहा, and I'll come back to sedition, UAPA जो रहा, the Congress government, except for the fact that confessions in police custody will not be accepted as evidence, except for that UAPA सब कुछ almost बचा कर रखा. वो भी क्यों हुआ? ये भी एक्सेप्टेंस क्यों हुआ? ये कौन सा समय था जब अमेंडमेंट्स लाके यूएपीए में उसको और ड्रैकोनियन बनाया गया? ये समय था 26/11 अटैक का. तो नेशनल सिक्योरिटी, नेशनल इंटरेस्ट के नाम पे और दिस वॉर ऑन टेरर, दिस सीज मेंटालिटी, दैट आपका देश उसको बाहर से भी तोड़ा जा रहा है, अंदर भी कुछ लोग हैं जो तोड़ रहे हैं. तो इस सब के बीच में बहुत आसान हो जाता है कुछ चीज़ों का एक्सेप्टेंस बना देना. मार्क्स ने जो 1845 अपने जर्मन आइडियोलॉजी में बोला था, द पीपल, द क्लास विच कंट्रोल्स द मटेरियल रिसोर्स इन सोसाइटी ऑल्सो कंट्रोल्स द इंटेलेक्चुअल रिसोर्स इन सोसाइटी. तो वही देख रहे हैं हम लोग कि इनके पास मीडिया है, अलग अलग तरीके के एवेन्यूज़ हैं अपना ओपिनियंस बनाने के. लेकिन उसके बावजूद इस दौरान एक बहुत अच्छी चीज़ जो निकल कर आई है, वो निकल कर आई है कि इस सेडिशन के मामले में भी अगर देखा जाए तो बहुत आवाज़ें उठी हैं. और क्योंकि जेएनयू में इन्होंने, अब झारखंड में ये करते हैं, वो बहुत न्यूज़ नहीं बनता. झारखंड में ऑपरेशन ग्रीनलैंड चल रहा है, आदिवासियों को मारा जा रहा है, रेप्स हो रहे हैं, बहुत साइलेंस करके करा जा रहा है. लेकिन जब इन्होंने देश की राजधानी में और उसका एक बहुत ही प्रतिष्ठित यूनिवर्सिटी में स्टूडेंट्स को इस तरीके से अरेस्ट किया, ये सामने आया कि डॉक्टर्ड वीडियोस का इस्तेमाल किया गया, जिस सामने आया कि क्योंकि एक यूनिवर्सिटी में एक डिफरेंट पॉलिटिकल ओपिनियंस और एक प्रतिरोध का एक कल्चर है, उसको दबाने के लिए किया और बहुत ब्लेटेंट तरीके से किया. तो ये बहुत एक्सपोज हुए. बहुत सारे लोग जो अपने आप को इस तरफ नहीं रखते थे, जिन्हें बोलेंगे सॉफ्ट राइट विंग, वो भी अनकंफर्टेबल हुए. बहुत सारे लोग, हमारे कैंपस में एबीपी के 3-4 लोगों ने पब्लिकली रिजाइन करा एबीपी से, और बहुत जगह ऐसा हुआ है. तो बहुत उम्मीद का किरण है कि आज के समय सेडिशन पे बात होना शुरू हुआ है.